Have you always wanted to start your own business? Do you have an innovative idea or an invention, but just don't know how to turn it into a company? Are you already in business and need some help growing? The BRF's Entrepreneurial Accelerator Program can help. At EAP, we work alongside you, helping you with things like financial modeling, funding strategy, pitch preparation, and marketing strategy. So what are you waiting for? Go to eapla.com today and set up a time to talk with our team. Let EAP help you launch or grow your business in North Louisiana today.
Welcome back to On the Cusp. Matt Snyder, my co-host, is with me, and today he's got one of his friends, Chase. Matt, I'll let you introduce him.
Super excited to have my friend Chase Boytim. We've known each other and ran together, I guess, since middle school or high school. Chase is a much better runner than me at this point, but Chase is very interesting to me because you got in the game in Shreveport so early, worked with some legends, and have done so much. And you and I feel like we both call each other to bounce off. Are my feelings on this in line or a little too much at times? So I'm so excited to have you here.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate both of y'all. I've kind of played out some of those, learned the hard way on some, especially with some of the event stuff. And so I love our conversations. Usually last about an hour, but I mean, a little bit about myself. Like right out of college, I started working with the Cush brothers, who were restaurateurs and bar owners, and started working with them when I was like 19 years old, and never would have guessed, fell backwards into becoming business partners with them in Fatty Arbuckles, which I still have. And then over the next 15 years or so, we just opened a slew of bars and restaurants. I owned Bears, and we opened a place called City Bar and Fat Cats and The Boot and 211 and Aura, all over the last 15 years.
I love those dudes. If it's not working, let's just shut it down a couple weeks, rename it,
change the name, change the name and go right back at it.
Figure out what we got to fix and keep going.
Those are some really fun years. And then in the last couple of years, I've done a couple restaurants, and now just kind of still at Fatty's. This year will be my 20th year, and just trying to keep the dream alive.
Let's deep dive into Fatty's, because Fatty's is like so interesting to me. And a lot of the things we talk about, Fatty's has a unique lens to look at.
Yeah.
Fatty's is located in the Red River District.
Correct.
It's the only business that has consistently lasted in the Red River District over those 20 years.
100%.
I mean, it sucks to say,
but
we're saying it. It's fair to say.
You've seen and lived the changes in that industry.
Absolutely. Right? I've seen, the good and the bad, and we've had a couple different kind of the evolution of that area. Right now, sadly, it's kind of in more of a bad turn, but it's been interesting. We're right next to those two casinos. When I first started operating Fatty Arbuckles, we were more or less like a shot bar. Believe it or not, the space was actually originally built to be a marble slab, and it was the smallest space in that area. And Brian basically was talked into just kind of like the places you see on Bourbon Street, where you would grab a beer and it was open container back then, and we were like, let's do it. And he had some problems with management and kind of passed along, and it was actually his brother that recommended, like, why don't you put Chase in charge of it? He's young, and I had just turned 21. And we had pretty much instant success. But similar to like your story with what you're doing with events, I mean, we started, doing reggae nights and having all this fun stuff. And I kind of struck lightning in a bottle just because I was at that perfect age. Everybody was turning 21, and we had so much fun with it. And we just kind of kept it alive and did other projects, and it just became addictive just doing.
You see still today a lot of people that are in town at the casino or whatnot, and you get to visit with a lot of visitors to Shreveport. What do you hear? Give me some insight of like, you're like a good taxi cab driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? I mean, lately, somewhat negative stuff about downtown and that area, but the casinos will tell you that the non-smoking kind of hurt their business. I don't know one way or the other. I do know that their business has been hurting in downtown Shreveport, and naturally Shreveport kind of goes through different areas. I mean, I think that like Bossier is on, kind of their come up. I mean, they're kind of where we were in
that
2002.
East Bank deal is real. We had Bo and Peanut on there.
Yeah.
And what they're proving down there is definitely, it reminds me a lot of you like 20 years ago.
Absolutely. I've made that comparison a lot just because, a lot of people don't remember it, but we had open container in the Red River District to like mid 2008. So from 2001 or 2 to 2008. And, but I do like the way they're doing it in Bossier. I think that they have a really good, and they're a little bit more in control of their, because they're right in their backyard.
I was going to say,
they're a little more control.
Bo and Peanut feel like two orchestra leaders, like
absolutely
guiding that thing.
Absolutely.
And I think you have been that for the Red River District in a lot of ways, but there's just been so much chaos down there through all these different things that you're holding on and through our conversations, I admire your positive attitude in a lot of years when I'm, losing it and you're telling me to calm down and you're telling me it's still all great. I'm like, Chase, no, it's not. It's on fire.
I have those moments, believe it or not. I try not to, but,
you're good at that. Tell me about the casino employee too. Okay, that's a visitor day. What do you see? Because that's another part of our society that, how many jobs are down there?
There's a lot of casino jobs.
There are, and a lot of those guys, they kind of recycle through different casinos and stuff like that. And
do you see a lot of them in your
I do. I used to see more. Something that kind of hurt us is El Dorado had been there for a long time, and there were some people that literally worked at El Dorado, but when it was Hollywood since the 90s. Whenever COVID came, there was like mass layoffs, just naturally, just because it was closed down. And a lot of those people rehired, and we saw a lot of those people go to other casinos. And so it's been a little different. We haven't seen some of the same faces. There were some people that I know that I used to see that had been there forever and were just like a staple there. So it's been a different change. But a lot of industries, I know my friend Delton, who's in the hotel industry, he's seeing it, and all, many of these different businesses are seeing changes from COVID. So that's natural, but it's been a little different for us because we're just not seeing those familiar faces. But they're always very supportive of us. Yeah. Even though I don't know if the casino necessarily loves that, but because they want to keep people in the casino, but they're like,
they always want everybody in
absolutely.
the casino.
They're like, hey, we go over here, come check us out and have a drink with us afterwards. And a long time ago, El Dorado used to have their parking where you had to pass our door. That might have been the biggest favor they ever did to us ever, where they would walk by and they'd be like, all right, I'm going to stop in for one on the way out of here or whatever. But it's been great.
Okay, so your whole adult life, you've been doing business in Shreveport. Since you're 19 years old. That's as close as anybody can say. I've been running businesses in Shreveport my whole life. Today to 20 years ago, is it easier or harder to own a business in Shreveport, Louisiana?
It's a difficult question. I think in a lot of ways it's definitely harder. I think there's a little bit more red tape. Some of it's justified, and some of it I kind of push back on. But also there are other positives that I see too, where like, you and I've talked about this, outside of this all the time, is like, if you'd rewind the clock 15 years and you told me we had all these cool restaurants, some of the stuff that you're doing, I couldn't imagine it happening. So I do feel like the public itself is more accepting of cool new things. And so,
that's a hard, I asked the question and I think it's a hard one because I think it's both. And I really would probably lean towards, as much as we complain about some of the things, is it's gotten easier. And I think it's gotten easier for people like us. I do think that the powers that be that just held everything. You remember there was only one company in town that bartended parties 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of that has busted down. And it's not that they're not fighting us just as hard, or people like us. They still are. But I think there's a big enough group of people that are questioning things, taking risks, that those powers that be just aren't as strong.
Yeah, I mean, but I just think there were less. I mean, you're seeing more people do it. Obviously, I love that you had Sylvester on here. But I mean, I kind of feel like the Cushes were like that. They were like us back in the late 80s to early 90s. So they were there, I just think in less numbers.
They gave less of a care than we do. We are like philanthropists compared.
But they had some cool projects. I mean, Centenary Oyster House. That's all.
the Village. I mean, all those.
That's all I got to hear about basically growing up with those guys is the heyday, and like, so it's kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, I'm super excited for a lot of friends that I consider restaurateurs and bar owners and their successes. And I mean, I definitely see that moving very positively. I mean, in a positive direction. Yeah, I mean, there's been some kind of like, back to your question. I mean, we've seen some like, me opening brick and mortar businesses. I've seen kind of some changes in MPC and the way things happen, but even those are getting better. But for a while, it was pretty difficult. Yeah.
I mean, I do think like some things, we all have things that like it's the season of them, whatever that is. I have events I don't do anymore, all kinds of things. Like, but I look back sometimes and I'm like, like I don't still do that, but because we did that, look at these things that happen. And I think you've done a whole lot of that. I mean, like you're reinvigorating Bears, I think was such an awesome time and has grown on. I think what you did in that building on Kings Highway is not now Fat Calf. I think you put that building back on the map. And I think a lot of people have to take risks and do a lot of hard things for the community to get better.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think it's always the person that took that initial risk that gets to reap that reward.
Yeah.
But dude, I notice it and appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, those are both two really fun projects too. I mean, I live in Highland, so being right around the block. I mean, and I frequent both of those places all the time. Two of my favorite places. It was exciting. I mean, I really love doing what I do in the restaurant and bar world. In fact, I was doing more events. Yeah. And I'm kind of doing less events. I still do like, of course, bourbon and barbecue once a year, but I see myself doing less events just because I'm so focused on kind of like, what do they say? Like, if you're involved in too many different projects, you're a master of none, I mean, I was kind of falling victim to that and stretching myself thin. And I really love the food and beverage business. So I've really...
What advice would you give somebody? Because a lot of people are afraid to just go out and do it in the food and beverage. If you were talking to somebody that said, I'm thinking about it, what would you tell them?
I would really encourage them to go and work with somebody like Anthony or like Frank or myself, and work with them and kind of learn the business and then really go out there and try it.
Because the thing about Chase that I was going to say, because this is the part that if they miss, they miss.
Right.
Chase Boytim, when he was running Bears, and we were getting older. Like I had multiple kids and whatnot at that point. Like we were probably in our mid-30s.
Yeah.
Point. Chase is like, come down here and sit. And I'd come down and visit Chase. And Chase would be like, well, just knock on my door. I live above the bar. And Chase would like run out and take a nap, then come down and restock the cooler.
Yeah.
The guys I know that are very successful in that industry, and you would be top of my list examples. I hope I'm an example when you see me at an event. We're in the trenches grinding.
Oh, 100%.
We are doing the work. So if you come to me and you say, and I think we would definitely agree on this, if you come to me and say, hey, I'm looking at getting in the food and beverage business, but I'm going to hire a manager and I'm going to manage them, and
it's going to be tough.
My advice would be don't do that.
No, absolutely. I mean, and I basically got a crash course on restaurant and bar owning, working with my old business partners who have since passed away. But I mean, my old business partner, who was like a brother to me, he was like John Taffer. He would tell you every little trick on how to, like, you know, the bottles have to be just this way, or somebody will grab the wrong bottle, and just things that you would never think of. And you know, it was like getting a PhD in that type of business. And so I really encourage, because I have a lot of people who come to Fatty's and like, man, I'd love to do that. And I just always encourage them, like, there's so many people. I mean, one of the guys I have a lot of respect for, Gabriel Barderas. I mean, go work for a guy like that. I mean, it feels like everything he touches turns to gold. I mean, you know, go learn and then get an idea and really, you know, shoot for the moon and do it, you know. So
what do you think, where do we go from here? What is the future of Shreveport Bossier's entertainment?
Food, beverage, and entertainment. What's next for us?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, obviously, you know, what we're seeing, like Cypress and stuff, we need people to keep taking risks and keep doing things. I think that we need to, like, you know, definitely have some sort of pressure on local government to basically encourage that and help create an atmosphere that allows entrepreneurship and really guides that path in a positive direction.
Yeah, I think that the idea of just staying out of it or avoiding it or not, you know, if you're not actively supporting it, in my book,
then you're
not
absolutely.
Then you're not, because it's a hard industry. It's a risky thing.
Oh yeah, and in all of our projects, we never had just a ton of money, and so, you know, we were working on very tight budgets, getting it open, and I can remember we were, you know, sometimes it was us working 16-hour days, putting up the paint and all that type of stuff, and that's what it takes. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with some of that red tape is that you know, if you have, you know, a 45-day plus 30-day waiting periods, it's just it starts to get too expensive for just the average Joe.
You can't drag it along.
You can't. It's got to be something that happens
and
fast.
Entertainment things, like those kind of things we're talking about, are almost impossible to find big money investors. So you are nickel and diming it out of your own pocket.
You're going to bootstrap it.
You're bootstrapping it. So anything slow costing you money.
That's right. Anybody slow rolling
detrimental.
You're losing money.
And it's basically economic Russian roulette. I mean, I don't think there's anything more risky out there for sure. But no, I would totally agree. But I'm hoping there's definitely, I've dealt with a lot of people. I mean, we had a great festival this year at the Bourbon and Barbecue Festival, and I'm hoping that remains. I think next year we'll probably try to find another location, just because I just don't see any progress happening in the Red River District.
Chase, hey, appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate you.
About it time, and all the best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thanks, guys.